My husband always said his ex-wife turned his kids against him. Then his teenage daughter showed up at our door asking why he stopped calling her back 2 years ago. I'd heard the story 100 times. How his ex poisoned the children against him. How she'd refused to let him see them. How she'd blocked his number and moved without telling him. How he'd tried everything, but the courts favored mothers, and he'd been shut out of their lives. He'd tell me this over wine at dinner, his voice heavy with resignation. She made them believe I didn't care. There was nothing I could do. The system is rigged against fathers. I believed every word. When we got married last year, I even suggested we try reaching out again. Maybe enough time had passed. Maybe the kids were old enough now to see through their mother's manipulation. He'd shake his head sadly, that wounded look in his eyes. They're too far gone. She's made sure they hate me. Better to let them come to me when they're ready. I felt so much compassion for him, this man who'd been robbed of his children by a vindictive ex. I promised myself I'd be different, supportive, understanding, everything she clearly wasn't. Then on a Tuesday afternoon in February, while I was working from home, a girl appeared on our porch. She was maybe 15, wearing a worn jacket that was too thin for the cold weather, holding a backpack that looked like it had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exactly like the photos my husband kept in his office drawer, the ones from when they were younger, before the divorce, before everything fell apart, according to his version of events. "Can I help you?" I asked through the screen door. I didn't recognize her at first. The photos were from years ago. "I'm looking for my dad," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "This is the address I found online." My stomach dropped. I knew immediately who she was. The daughter he claimed wanted nothing to do with him. The child who'd been turned against him by her mother's lies. I called for my husband. He came around the corner from his home office and froze. His face went white, then red. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. Not hello, not surprise or joy, just anger. The girl flinched. I saw her shoulders tense. "I wanted to talk to you. I've been trying to call for 2 years. You stopped answering. 2 years. The number hung in the air. I felt something shift in my chest. He'd told me he hadn't heard from them in over 4 years, that they'd cut off all contact when he started dating me. "Your mother put you up to this," my husband said. His voice was cold in a way I'd never heard directed at anyone, let alone his own child. "Mom doesn't even know I'm here." The girl's voice cracked slightly. "She told me to stop trying, that you'd made your choice. But I had to know why." "Know why what?" he said, still not inviting her inside, still standing in the doorway like she was a stranger, like she was selling something he didn't want. "Why you stopped calling me back." The girl pulled out an old phone from her pocket. One of those cheap smartphones that probably came from a prepaid plan. She swiped through screens with shaking hands. I could see message after message, missed calls, voicemails, all from her to a number I recognized as my husband's old phone, the one he'd had before we met, the one he claimed his ex had blocked. "Dad, I sent you dozens and dozens of messages that summer, the summer before 8th grade. You answered twice, once to tell me you were busy, once to say we'd talk later, then nothing, for 2 years. Nothing." I felt like I was watching a stranger. My husband's jaw tightened. That vein in his temple started pulsing, the one that appeared when he was stressed. "You were being difficult, taking your mother's side in everything." "I was 13, she whispered. "I didn't have a side. You divorced Mom. Not me, not my brother. But you stopped coming to my soccer games. You canceled our weekends, said you had work trips. You forgot my birthday. That year and the next year. I waited all day both times thinking maybe you'd remember." "That's not how it happened," my husband said. But his voice lacked conviction. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Then how did it happen?" I heard myself ask. I stepped forward, closer to the door, closer to this girl who was making my entire marriage feel like it was built on sand. He turned to me. His expression was hard. "You don't understand. She's twisting everything. She's been coached. Can't you see this is exactly what her mother wanted?" The girl pulled a folder from her backpack, the kind of folder you'd use for school projects. It was bent and worn, court documents. She unfolded them carefully. A custody agreement that clearly stated joint custody, 50-50 time split. No restrictions, no supervised visits, no blocked access, just a standard shared custody arrangement. And underneath that, a stack of printed text messages. His messages. I could see his name at the top of each page, canceling visits, making excuses, telling his children he was busy with work, with his new girlfriend, with wedding planning, eventually just stopping altogether. The dates spanned many months. The messages got more and more sparse until they just stopped. She'd printed them all, saved them, carried them with her like evidence at a trial. I wanted to defend him, this man I'd married, this man who'd held me when my grandmother died, who'd brought me coffee every morning, who'd seemed so wounded by his past. But my mind was racing through every story he told me, how his ex wouldn't let him see the kids, except the court order showed otherwise, how she'd turned them against him, except here was his daughter, begging to know why he'd abandoned her, how he'd tried so hard to stay in their lives. Except these messages showed him pulling away, gradually, deliberately, how he'd fought for custody and lost. Except this agreement showed 50-50 time that he'd simply stopped using. The girl's eyes met mine. She looked so tired, so much older than 15 should look. There was something in her expression, not anger, just exhaustion, like she'd been carrying this weight for years and had finally put it down. "I just wanted to know if it was something I did," she said quietly. "If I said something wrong, if I wasn't good enough, if there was a reason you stopped wanting to be my dad." My husband stepped between us. his body blocking the doorway completely. "You need to leave. Now. This is harassment. I can call the police." Something in me snapped. "No, you won't." I put my hand on his arm. He shook it off, but I held my ground. "Let her talk. There's nothing to talk about," he said. "Can't you see what this is? She shows up here with some printed papers, some sob story, and you're falling for it, just like her mother wanted." "These aren't just papers," I said. I was looking at the custody agreement, at the judge's signature, at the dates. They don't lie. Courts make mistakes all the time. He was sweating now despite the cold air coming through the open door. The girl hadn't moved. She stood there on our porch like she was rooted in place, like if she moved, she might shatter. "I made you a card for Father's Day that first year," she said. "I drew a picture of us at the zoo, from when I was little. You used to take me every spring. We'd see the penguins first because they were my favorite. I mailed it to your apartment, the one you moved to after you left. It came back marked return to sender. I never got any card," my husband said, "because you'd already moved here, with her." The girl looked at me. No judgment in her eyes. Just fact. "You moved in together not long after the divorce was final. Mom found out from your Facebook. Your relationship status update. That's how we found out you were getting serious with someone. Not from you, from social media." I felt sick. He told me he'd waited a full year after the divorce before dating, that he'd taken time to heal, to process, that his ex had moved on immediately with someone new. Another lie, or at least another version of the truth so twisted it might as well have been. "How did you find us?" I asked the girl. She pulled out her phone again, showed me a private investigator website. I saved money from my part-time job. It cost me several months of wages for them to do a basic search. They found this address in just days. It wasn't hidden. You're both on the property records. Your names are on the mailbox. My husband had told me we needed to keep our address private, that his ex might show up, might cause problems. I'd thought he was being protective. Now I realized he'd just been hiding. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come looking now after 2 years of silence?" "Because my brother tried to hurt himself last month." The girl's voice finally broke. She swiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "He's 13. He wrote in his journal that he wasn't good enough for his own dad to love him, that if he was better, maybe you wouldn't have left. Mom found the journal. We got him help, a therapist. But I needed to know if it was us, if we drove you away, or if it was always going to be this way." The silence that followed felt crushing. My husband said nothing, just stood there. His face was red, his hands were clenched into fists, but he said nothing. I thought about my own father, how he'd driven half a day through a snowstorm to be at my college graduation, how he'd called every Sunday without fail, how when my mother was sick, he'd rearranged his entire life to care for her, how he'd taught me that love wasn't just a feeling, it was showing up, consistently, even when it was hard. "Your brother," I said to the girl, "is he okay now?" "He's getting better." She nodded. "He's in therapy. We both are. Mom made sure of that. She's been working 2 jobs since the divorce to cover everything because the child support check stopped coming regularly about a year ago." I looked at my husband. "You told me you paid every month, that you were meticulous about it." "I pay when I can," he muttered. "Business has been tight. We just bought a new car last month, a luxury SUV he'd wanted. We'd spent thousands on a vacation over Christmas. I'd watched him spend hundreds on expensive alcohol at dinner last week." The girl saw my expression change. She was perceptive, old, beyond her years. "I should go," she said. "I got my answer. I'm sorry for bothering you." "Wait," I said, but I didn't know what to say next. What do you say to a child whose father chose comfort over her, chose a new life over the family he'd made? How do you apologize for believing the worst about her mother without question? "It's okay," the girl said. She actually smiled. It was sad but genuine. Mom always said people show you who they are. You just have to be willing to see it. I guess I needed to see it for myself. She turned to leave. I watched her small figure walk down our driveway. She'd taken a bus here. I could see the route map sticking out of her backpack. She'd traveled over an hour each way on public transportation to get closure, to understand why she wasn't enough. And my husband had given her nothing, not even the decency of an honest conversation. I went back inside. My husband was already in his office, door closed, like nothing had happened, like his daughter hadn't just stood on our porch and asked him why he'd abandoned her. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, started searching. Court records are public. It took me under half an hour to find the divorce file, a bit longer to find the custody agreement. Everything the girl had said was true. Joint custody, no restrictions. His ex-wife hadn't blocked him. The court hadn't ruled against him. He'd simply been given exactly what he'd asked for and then stopped using it. I kept digging, found social media posts he'd claimed his ex had blocked him from seeing. They were public. His children aging from young kids to teenagers, birthday posts, school achievements, soccer games, band concerts, every major moment documented, no privacy settings, no blocks. He could have seen all of it, could have shown up to any of it. He just chose not to. I found his text messages, the ones he'd saved in his cloud backup, the ones he probably forgot about, messages from his daughter begging him to come to her games, his responses getting shorter and shorter, more annoyed, more dismissive, finally just telling her to stop bothering him, that he had a life now, that she needed to respect that, messages from his ex asking him to please just call his kids, not demanding, not angry, just asking, please talk to your daughter. She misses you. His response, she'll get over it. Kids are resilient. Messages from his son, shorter, less frequent, eventually just one. Do you still love us? No response. The message had been read 2 years ago. Never answered. I sat there until it got dark outside. My husband eventually emerged from his office, hungry, ready for dinner like it was a normal day. That was inappropriate, he said. Her showing up like that. I'm going to call my lawyer tomorrow. Make sure she doesn't do it again. I looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the wounded father act, past the victim narrative, saw someone who'd simply traded in his old family for a new model, like upgrading a phone, out with the old, in with the new. No backward glances. She just wanted to talk to you, I said, and I told her it wasn't a good time. He was checking his phone, scrolling through something, not even looking at me. It's been 2 years. When will it be a good time? This isn't your business. His voice got sharp. You don't understand the history, the complications. Then explain it to me. I closed my laptop. Explain why your daughter sent you all those messages and you barely answered. Explain why you told me your ex blocked you when the court records show you had full access. Explain why your son is in therapy because he thinks he's not good enough for his own father to love. You've been snooping. His eyes narrowed. Going through my things. Your daughter showed me court documents, public records. That's not snooping. That's learning the truth you've been hiding. I haven't been hiding anything. You're twisting this just like she did. Just like her mother taught her to. She's 15, I said. She took 2 buses to get here. She saved up money from a part-time job to find you. That's not manipulation. That's desperation. He slammed his phone down on the counter. What do you want from me? You want me to say I'm a terrible father? Fine. I'm a terrible father. Happy now? I want you to tell me the truth. Did you really try to stay in their lives? Or did you decide starting over was easier than dealing with the mess of co-parenting? He was silent for a long moment. Then, you have no idea how hard it was. The constant guilt trips, the scheduling conflicts, the way they looked at me after the divorce, like I was the bad guy, like I'd ruined everything. So you stopped trying, I said. Because it was hard. Because it was impossible. His voice rose. Every visit was a reminder of what I'd lost. Every interaction with their mother was painful. I couldn't move forward while constantly being pulled backward. So you moved forward without them, left them behind. Your own children. They had their mother. They were fine. Except they weren't fine. Your son tried to hurt himself last month. Your daughter just told us that. He flinched, but recovered quickly. That's not my fault. That's on their mother for not getting them proper support. You stopped paying child support regularly, I said. I saw it in the records. You owe thousands in back payments. Business has been slow. We just spent thousands on a vacation. We bought an expensive car. You spent thousands on golf clubs last month. That's different. That's our life, our future. They're your children. I stood up. They're your responsibility. They didn't ask to be born. You chose to have them, and then you chose to walk away when it got inconvenient. You don't get to judge me. You don't have kids. You don't understand. I understand that you lied to me. I understand that everything you told me about your ex was designed to make you look like the victim. I understand that your daughter just stood on our porch and asked you why she wasn't good enough and you told her to leave. What was I supposed to say? He was pacing now. What magical words were going to fix years of damage? How about, I'm sorry? I stood up. How about I made mistakes? I should have been there. I want to do better. Literally anything other than blaming everyone else. It's not that simple. It is that simple. It's just not that easy. There's a difference. He stared at me. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this. How to make me understand his side, how to paint himself as the real victim again. I need time to think, I said. I grabbed my keys, my coat. Where are you going? I don't know. A hotel. My sister's place. Anywhere but here. You're really going to leave over this? Over my psycho ex sending her daughter here to manipulate you? Your ex didn't send her. Your daughter came on her own, looking for her father. And instead of talking to her like a human being, you treated her like an inconvenience. I left before he could respond, drove to my sister's apartment across town. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. Made tea. Let me talk. I told her everything. The daughter showing up, the court records, the messages, the lies, all of it. So what are you gonna do? She asked when I finally stopped talking. I don't know. I felt numb, like I was in shock. How do you unknow something like this? How do you stay married to someone who could abandon their own children and then lie about it for years? You already know what you're going to do, my sister said gently. You're just scared to admit it. She was right. I'd known the moment I saw those text messages. The moment I read his dismissive responses to his children begging for his attention. You can't unsee that kind of thing. You can't unknow who someone really is once the mask comes off. I stayed at my sister's for several days. My husband called repeatedly, left voicemails, started apologetic, then angry, then apologetic again. Classic cycle. I didn't answer. Instead, I made a list. All the things he'd told me about his ex. All the things he'd claimed she'd done. Then I started checking them, one by one. She'd moved without telling him. False. She'd filed all the proper paperwork with the court. Sent him certified mail with the new address. He'd signed for it. She'd turned the kids against him. False. The kids had tried to maintain contact. He'd stopped responding. She'd blocked him from school events. False. I called the school. His name was on the approved list for all activities. He'd never been removed. He just stopped showing up. She'd badmouthed him to the children. Maybe true, maybe not. But honestly, after what he'd done, could I blame her if she had? By the end of my research, I had a file, my own folder of evidence. I went back to our house. He was waiting, looking contrite. I'm sorry, he said immediately. You were right. I shouldn't have reacted that way. Seeing her just brought up a lot of painful memories. Save it, I said. I put my folder on the counter. I've been checking your stories. Everything you told me was a lie. His expression shifted. Not all at once. Gradually. Like watching a mask slip. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. You told me your ex was vindictive, manipulative, that she destroyed your relationship with your kids. But she didn't. You did. You just needed someone to blame so you could live with yourself. You're being dramatic. Your son is 13 years old and he's in therapy because he thinks he's not good enough for you to love. Your daughter took 2 buses to find you because she needed to know if she did something wrong. That's not dramatic. That's tragic. I tried to be there for them. I did. It was just too hard. Parenting is supposed to be hard, I said. That's the whole point. You don't get credit for trying. You get credit for showing up. Consistently. Even when it's painful. Even when it's inconvenient. Especially then. So what do you want me to do? Drive over there and apologize? Pretend like everything can just be fixed with a conversation? I want you to acknowledge what you did. I want you to stop lying. To yourself. To me. To anyone who will listen. I want you to take responsibility for abandoning your children instead of blaming everyone else for your choices. He said nothing. Just stood there. Finally, if I do that, if I admit everything, what then? What does that get me? Maybe a relationship with your kids. Maybe some self-respect. Maybe a chance to be better than you've been. Or maybe it's too late. Maybe they're better off without me. And there it was. The real truth. He'd rather believe his kids were better off without him than do the hard work of actually being a father. It was easier. Cleaner. Let him off the hook entirely. I think you should leave, I said. This is my house too. But you should go stay somewhere else for a while. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to go. There's a difference. He left that night. Took a bag of clothes. Went to his brother's place. For the next week, I sat with everything I'd learned. Tried to reconcile the man I'd married with the father who'd abandoned his children. Couldn't do it. They were the same person. I'd just been seeing the version of him he wanted me to see. I called his ex-wife, got the number from the court records. She answered on the second ring. This is going to sound strange, I said, but I'm your ex-husband's wife, current wife. I don't know for how much longer. She was quiet for a moment. Then, did my daughter find him? Yes. She was here several days ago. Is she okay? The concern in her voice was immediate. Genuine. I think so. She seemed sad, but strong. She handled herself well. She's been working on that in therapy, trying to find closure. I told her not to go, that it would just hurt more. But she needed to see for herself. I believe her, I said. About everything. The messages. The custody agreement. All of it. She let out a long breath. Thank you for saying that. You have no idea how many people have believed his version over the years. His family. Our old friends. Everyone thinks I'm the villain in this story. I'm sorry. I was one of those people. I believed everything he told me. I felt protective of him. I thought you'd wronged him. He's good at that. Making himself the victim. It's how he justifies things. To himself, to everyone else. Can I ask you something? I said. Did you really try to work with him? After the divorce? I tried everything. She laughed bitterly. Joint therapy. Separate therapy. Mediation. Flexible scheduling. I sent him photos and videos of the kids. Kept him updated on everything. For the first year, I bent over backwards trying to make co-parenting work. Then he met you. And he just stopped. Stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped trying. The kids would wait by the window for him to pick them up and he just wouldn't show. No call, no text. I'd have to explain to them that maybe dad had an emergency. Maybe he forgot. Making excuses for him. Until I couldn't any. I felt sick. I thought about all the times he'd told me his ex made co-parenting impossible. All the times he'd played the victim. I'm so sorry, I said again. I didn't know. It's not your fault. You believed someone you loved? That's normal. She paused. What changed? Why are you calling now? Because I saw the way he looked at his daughter. Like she was an inconvenience. Like she was bothering him by existing. And I realized that's how he'll look at any children we might have if things get hard. If the marriage fails, if life gets complicated, he'll just walk away and find someone new to tell a sob story to. Probably, she agreed. But at least you're seeing it now. Before you have kids with him, your daughter left a folder here, with all the court documents. I want to send it back to her along with something else. Is that okay? What else? An apology. From me. For believing her father without question. For not seeing the truth sooner. She gave me the address. I spent that evening writing a letter. Not excusing my husband's behavior. Not trying to fix anything. Just acknowledging what had happened. What I'd learned. That his daughter was strong and brave for coming here. That she didn't do anything wrong. That sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most fail at it. And it's not our fault. I mailed it the next day along with her folder. Also included a check. For the back child support he owed. Thousands of dollars from our joint account. He'd be furious. I didn't care. My husband came home a week later. Wanting to talk. Ready to try again. I'd already packed his things. Already started the paperwork for legal separation. This is extreme, he said. We can work through this. No, I said. We can't. Because the problem isn't something we did. It's who you are. You're someone who walks away when things get hard. Who rewrites history to make yourself the hero. Who blames everyone else for your failures. I can't be married to that person. You're really throwing away our marriage over my crazy ex and her manipulative kids? They're not manipulative. They're children who miss their father. Children you abandoned because it was easier than being uncomfortable. I did the best I could, he insisted. No, you didn't. And that's the problem. You did the bare minimum and then quit when even that felt like too much. He left. Angry. Wounded. Already rehearsing the story, he'd tell his next girlfriend about how his second wife turned on him, how she believed his ex over him, how she left him when he needed her most. The cycle continuing. I never heard from his daughter again. But a month later, I got a card in the mail. Just a simple thank you note. She wrote that she appreciated the letter, that it helped, that she was doing better. that her brother was doing better too, that they were both in therapy and learning that sometimes people let you down and it's not your fault. She ended it with, "You seem like a nice person. I hope you find someone who deserves you." I kept that card, framed it, put it on my desk at work as a reminder of the cost of believing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth, of how easy it is to be the villain in someone else's story without even knowing it, of how children can be so much braver than the adults who are supposed to protect them. 2 years have passed since that Tuesday in February. I'm divorced now, rebuilt my life, started dating again, but I'm more careful this time. I listen for the stories people tell about their exes, about their children, about anyone who supposedly wronged them. I look for the gaps, the inconsistencies, the places where the victim narrative seems a little too polished, a little too convenient. Because I learned that when someone tells you everyone else in their life was the problem, they're usually the common denominator. And I learned that sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that make you question everything you thought you knew. Sometimes a 15-year-old girl shows up at your door and changes your entire life. Not by trying to, not by being manipulative or vindictive, just by asking one simple question. Why did you stop calling me back? That question still haunts me sometimes. The simplicity of it, the pain underneath, the hope that there might be an answer that makes sense, that makes the abandonment hurt less. But sometimes there is no good answer. Sometimes people just stop trying, stop caring, stop showing up, and they make up stories to justify it. To themselves and everyone else. My ex-husband is engaged again now. I saw it on social media. Another woman, another fresh start. Another chance to be the victim of his terrible ex-wife who turned his kids against him. I wonder if he's told her the story yet. Wonder if she believes it. I almost sent her a message, a warning, but I didn't. She'll figure it out on her own, or she won't. Some lessons you can only learn by living through them. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that girl, his daughter. Wonder how she's doing, if she's healing, if she's found peace with the fact that her father chose comfort over her. If her brother is okay, if they both understand now that it was never about them being good enough, it was always about their father not being brave enough. I hope they know that. I hope they grow up knowing their worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it, even if that someone is supposed to love them unconditionally. Because in the end, that's what I learned from a 15-year-old girl standing on my porch with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of hope. That love isn't about grand gestures or beautiful words. It's about showing up, consistently, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And if you can't do that, the least you can do is be honest about it. Stop blaming everyone else. Stop making yourself the victim. Own your failures, your choices, your abandonment. But my ex-husband never will. He'll keep telling his story, keep finding new people to believe it, keep starting over instead of doing the hard work of actually changing. And somewhere out there, his children are growing up without him, building lives he's not part of, creating memories he'll miss, becoming people he'll never really know, all because he decided they were too hard to love. And that's the saddest part of all. Not that he couldn't love them, but that he chose not to, that he looked at the mess of co-parenting and complicated relationships and decided it was easier to walk away, to start fresh, to pretend his old life never happened. I think about that sometimes. How easy it is to discard people, to decide they're too complicated, too difficult, too much work, how we justify it to ourselves, tell ourselves stories about how they're better off without us, how it's not really our fault, how circumstances made it impossible. But the truth is simpler and harder. Sometimes we're just not willing to do what love requires. The showing up, the consistency, the uncomfortable conversations and difficult moments, the messiness of real relationships with real people who have real needs. We're not willing, so we walk away, and we tell ourselves stories to make it okay, to make us the heroes of our own narratives instead of the villains of someone else's. But that 15-year-old girl knew the truth, saw through all the stories, all the excuses, all the justifications. She just wanted her dad to call her back, that's all. Such a simple thing, such a basic request, and he couldn't even do that. So she took 2 buses to find him, printed out the evidence, asked her question, got her answer, and walked away with her head high. Stronger than many adults I know, braver than her own father ever was, and I'll spend the rest of my life hoping she knows how incredible that is, how much strength it took, how much courage, how much hope she had to hold on to make that journey in the first place. I hope she's okay. I hope they both are. His daughter and his son, the children he left behind, the children who were never the problem, never turned against him, never stopped trying to reach him, the children who just wanted their dad. And I hope someday he realizes what he lost. Not so he can fix it. I think it's too late for that, but so he can stop telling himself comfortable lies. So he can own what he did. So he can at least give them that, the truth, the acknowledgement, the apology they deserve but will probably never get. But I'm not holding my breath. Some people never change, never learn, never grow. They just keep repeating the same patterns with different people, keep being the victims of everyone else's failures instead of owning their own. And their children grow up knowing exactly who their parents are. Not the story, not the excuse, not the version they tell at dinner parties. But the truth, the real them, the person who decided walking away was easier than staying, who chose comfort over their own kids. That's the legacy my ex-husband is leaving. Not what he tells himself, not what he tells his new fiancée, but what his children know to be true. That when it mattered most, when they needed him most, he wasn't there. By choice, by decision, by prioritizing himself over them in every possible way. And that's something no amount of rewriting history can change, no matter how many times he tells the story. No matter how many people believe him, his children know, and that's what counts. That's what matters. That's what will follow him for the rest of his life, whether he acknowledges it or not. The truth, simple and devastating. He stopped calling his daughter back, and when she asked why, he told her to leave. That's who he is. That's who he'll always be. Unless he decides to change, to do the work, to face the uncomfortable truth about himself. But I don't think he will. Some people never do. They just keep running, keep starting over, keep blaming everyone else, keep telling themselves they're the victim, and their children grow up without them, stronger for it eventually, but wounded in ways that take years to heal. I just hope those kids know it was never their fault, that they were always good enough, always worthy of love, that their father's failure to see that says everything about him and nothing about them. I hope they know that. I hope someone told them. I hope they believe it. Because they deserved better. They deserved a father who showed up, who tried, who loved them enough to be uncomfortable, who valued them more than his own comfort. They deserved so much better than what they got. And I hope they build lives full of people who give them exactly that. Love that shows up, consistently, without excuses, without conditions. The kind of love their father never could give them. Not because they weren't enough, but because he wasn't. My life has changed in ways I never expected since that afternoon. I'm more skeptical now, more questioning. I don't take people's stories at face value anymore. I look for what's not being said, for who's not in the room to give their version, for the gaps in the narrative that seem a little too convenient. I've also become more aware of my own stories, the ones I tell myself about my past, about my choices, about the people who've hurt me. I try to be honest, to acknowledge my role, to see where I might be the villain in someone else's story without realizing it. It's uncomfortable work, humbling, sometimes painful, but necessary, because I never want to be the person who rewrites history to make myself look better, who blames everyone else for my failures, who walks away from responsibility and calls it self-care. I never want to look at someone I'm supposed to love and see an inconvenience instead of a person. That's what his daughter taught me. That girl who showed up at our door with nothing but hope and a folder full of proof. She taught me that the truth matters, that accountability matters, that showing up matters. She taught me that children are often wiser than the adults who fail them, that they see through the lies even when they want to believe, that they carry the weight of abandonment with a grace their parents never could. She taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is seek the truth even when you know it's going to hurt, even when you hope you're wrong, even when every answer might confirm your worst fears. She took that journey, made that trip, asked that question, knowing she might not like what she found, knowing her father might reject her again, knowing she might walk away with more pain than she came with, but she did it anyway, because she needed to know, because closure matters. Because living with the truth, however painful, is better than living with comfortable lies. I admire her for that. This child who had more courage at 15 than most adults have in their entire lives. This girl who looked her father in the eye and asked him to account for his choices, who didn't accept his excuses, who simply wanted honesty. She deserved that. She deserved a father who could look at her and say, "You're right. I failed you. I made the wrong choices. I prioritized my comfort over your needs. I'm sorry." She deserved that basic acknowledgement, that simple truth, that minimum respect. But she didn't get it. Instead, she got anger, defensiveness, more lies, more blame, more of the same pattern that had driven her to our door in the first place, and she walked away knowing, finally knowing, that it wasn't about her. It was never about her. It was about him, his weakness, his inability to face himself, his choice to run rather than stay. I hope that knowledge helps her heal. I hope it frees her from the burden of wondering what she did wrong. I hope it lets her see that his failure wasn't her fault, because it wasn't. None of it was. Not her brother's struggles, not the abandonment, not the missed birthdays and forgotten games, not the unanswered messages or the growing silence. None of it was their fault. It was his. Only his. A choice he made, a choice he continues to make, a choice he'll probably keep making until the day he dies. And that's the tragedy. Not just what he did to his children, but what he did to himself. The relationships he'll never have, the memories he'll never make, the people his children will become without him there to see it. All because he couldn't face discomfort, couldn't push through the hard parts, couldn't love them more than he loved his own ease. That's the legacy he's building. And somewhere deep down, I think he knows it. I think that's why he needs the lies, the victim narrative, the constant rewriting of history. Because if he faced the truth, really faced it, he'd have to see himself for what he is. A man who abandoned his children, not because he had to, not because they rejected him, not because anyone prevented him, but because he chose to, because it was easier, because he could. That's the truth he can't face. So he tells stories instead, creates villains, finds new people to believe him, starts over, again and again. But his children know. They'll always know. And that truth will follow him forever, no matter how many times he tries to outrun it.